Engelstalig betekent ondertiteling op YouTube. Engelstalig betekent ondertiteling automatisch op YouTube.
I'll do it in English.
En anders
I'll do it in
Nederlands.
English, unless somebody complains. My name is Jack Jansen, or Jack Jansen, American way. And I'm going to talk about adaptive multimedia presentation. On, so it actually works. Yeah, it works. These are the topics I want to talk about today. I'll give a quick introduction of the group that I'm working in. We're going to talk about multimedia. We're going to talk about web applications. We're going to do a slight scientific sidestepping and talk about declarative versus procedural programming. And we're going to talk about open standards and free stuff to give away. The SEN5 groups that I'm part of, we're 8 people. I don't have pretty pictures like Jurgen had. This is going to be a multimedia presentation, but unlike Jurgen, who was not talking about multimedia, had pictures all over the place. You know, this is going to be heaps and heaps of text and very few pictures. And nothing moves actually, because I wanted to do a demo. Well, I'll get to that when we get there. Our group, there's actually 2 multimedia groups in CWI. We tend to think of ourselves as the hacker group. It's about packets and pixels. You know, we shove bits around. We do protocols. We do multimedia languages, interactive multimedia, where we have a strong slant towards implementation. The stuff we do, we write implementations around it, often open source. We also do a lot of knowledge transfer. We're active in standard bodies. The SMIL standard is one, but also HTML, SVG, time text we've been active in. As I said, we produce a lot of free software, and we have a lot of projects with industry, often in the European FP7 or the FP frameworks, but also one-to-one cooperations. Because we think knowledge transfer is, especially if you're a practical computer scientist, we think that knowledge transfer is an important part of your work. Okay, on to the real subject. Multimedia is here, finally. After many years of working in multimedia, now at least people know YouTube, Flickr, there's podcasts, internet radio, whatever, you know, multimedia is everywhere on the net. New emerging topics that we consider multimedia are IPTV. I don't know if anyone's been to IBC the last week. There's the 3D TV is the thing that got all the press, but the really interesting stuff is happening in IPTV. And that's really, I mean, if you think that 200 channels on your digital box is too many, well, wait till you get an IPTV digital box, then you get 20,000 channels, all equally interesting. Interactive TV is, we think, is an upcoming thing. Digital set-top boxes are getting more and more powerful, and they are now at a level that you can do, that you start to be able to do more than simply pressing the red or the green button. And we think that there's a whole area there. Digital signage is one that I think very interesting. I think I never knew what the word was. I'd seen it a lot, but it's the the interactive or the non-interactive displays in the tram or on stations or in shops and stuff. And, they're basically slideshows, but there's a lot more interesting things you can do with those. The other thing that's here, and this has been here for a bit longer than multimedia already, is web applications. For people who don't know exactly what web applications are, it's an application that runs on the web clearly, but the distinguishing feature is that a large part of the application application runs in your browser, which means that it's much more responsive than a server-based application. And Google Maps is a prime example where the data comes from the Google servers, but all the interaction, when you or with the mouse, whatever, when you zoom in and zoom out, that most of that is implemented inside your browser. and things like Facebook and hotel reservation sites, and you can. There's probably by now there's more dynamic websites than static websites. So what I want to talk about today is can we combine multimedia with web applications? But before we look at that, I want to take a step back and I want to talk about declarative versus procedural programming languages, or it's actually declarative versus procedural design philosophies, methods of looking at the world. And what's the difference between declarative and procedural? With declarative, you say what you want, and with procedural, you have to say how it has to be implemented. So if I say to my wife, which I don't have, girlfriend, if I say to my girlfriend, bring me a beer, that's declarative. And if I say to my girlfriend, go to the fridge, open it, grab a beer, open it, and give it to me, that's procedural. Whether either of these makes any difference, or go get my own beer is left as an exercise to the reader, but that's the difference between declarative and procedural. And spreadsheets are the best known example of a declarative language, where you don't say how something should be computed, but you tell it what to compute, and the spreadsheet engine will take care of all the details of how it has to be done, which is completely different from how you do it in a procedural language like JavaScript, where you have to sort of program it all yourself. If you think of declarative versus procedural, the interesting thing is that if you look at a system from top to bottom, at the very top, it is always declarative. Captain Kirk, the other one from Star Trek, always saying, make it so. And then, however it's implemented, he doesn't care as long as the Klingons are destroyed or whatever. At the, a CEO will say, up our revenues by 10%. And it's to its underlings to actually implement this. The declarative transfers responsibility. So declarative assumes that whoever you pass this command on to will know best how to execute it. And that is interesting because that actually means that, for example, with a spreadsheet, if you program, you want to add numbers and you program it all out, then if suddenly the numbers change from integers to floating point numbers, your program, your procedural program might have become useless. So you might have to recode it again using floating point operations instead of integer operations. With a declarative model, there's no such problem because the lower layer, the spreadsheet engine, can actually, it knows you want the addition and how it does it. Even if it uses magic, it doesn't matter as long as the outcome is correct. You're happy. But all that said, that doesn't mean that if you do everything declarative, it'll work, because actually procedural is the thing that gets the work done. At the very bottom end, there will be something, either a programmer or a piece of program or a piece of hardware that actually has to do the work of taking the number, adding the next number, taking the next number, adding it, etc.
That's only because our computers are procedural and not declarative.
I would argue that at some very low level, well, quantum computing may be an exception. I mean, maybe with quantum computing you can go declarative all the way, but that's because I don't understand it. I think neither do the quantum computing people. It just seems to work. No, I think at some low level there will be some procedural. There's going to be sequencing of steps, but we can discuss Okay, back to the subject. That was declarative versus procedural. Multimedia. Let's talk about multimedia standards. There's a lot of them. The most widely used today is probably Flash, which is not multimedia and not a standard, but it's what most of the multimedia you see on the web today is in. Flash has a number of shortcomings. It's proprietary. It is a binary format. It is by now, it started off as a very small, lightweight mechanism, and rather a small, lightweight and rather elegant mechanism to do things, but it has grown completely unwieldy over the years. And from our point of view, the main problem is actually the fact that it's not open. You cannot look into a Flash document and examine it. It's not indexable by Google. Those are the problems. HTML5 must of course be mentioned in if you talk about multimedia standards, although actually the only thing that it does for multimedia is it added the audio and video tag to HTML, which is in itself a big step forward, because now you don't have to, whereas a couple of years ago you must have used the Flash plugin. You don't agree? You don't talk about the object tag? Or?
Yeah, I don't think it's the elements that has made the difference, it's the API that's made the difference.
You're right, yeah. You could have used the object,
Yeah.
here's our Stephen HTML Pemberton. It's you could have used, he's right, for people who know HTML, the audio and video elements don't make a difference. It's just that there's now a JavaScript API, a DOM API,
That allows
which
you to
knows
use it.
that this is multimedia. SMIL is, well, the first version is by now 12 years old. It is not a very well-known standard, but it's one that I've been active in for a long time. So it's one that I'm going to talk about a lot. We'll get to a bit of SMIL in a moment. SVG is in a way,
It's the basis of MMS, isn't it? I mean,
it's the basis of MMS. It is used quite a lot in various technologies, but it's very often invisible.
Yeah.
I mean, it doesn't have the visibility of HTML, and it doesn't even have the visibility of SVG. SVG is a structured graphics format, but it also has some multimedia aspects. And I always like to mention NCL, which is not very well known here in Europe, but it's a Brazilian standard, and it is not a W3C spec, but a CCITT standard, and it's actually pretty important in interactive television, because Brazil is going to roll out set-top boxes to the whole Brazilian population in the coming years, and they will all have NCL built in. And so that means there's going to be a lot of those boxes on the market, and there's a very good chance that we'll see a lot more of this spec. And it's another declarative multimedia standard. It's actually fairly comparable to SMIL. So, what is SMIL? Who knows SMIL already? 3 people. Oh, okay.
From the days of books.
I'll give you 2 slides, and then you know SMIL. If you want to know more of SMIL, then there's a rather thick book that will teach you the rest, but these 2 slides should give you the basics. SMIL is about multimedia composition. It's not about sending a single video to a screen. It's about combining media. The media are not included in the SMIL document. The SMIL document is an XML-based format like HTML. It's a text format, and it references the media by URL in general. And it was SMIL is based on work that was done here at CWI in the mid-90s. And of course, being scientifically in nature, it is the basics are very simple. The operations, there are 3 operations on SMIL that you could do on multiple media. One is parallel composition, where you say start playing these 2 media at the same time. guess. And it's sequential composition, which is play first the one media, then play the other media. Then we need a third operation, and that is optional playback. So that's control, either play the media or don't play the media. And then the only thing we need is recursion, and now we can do every conceivable combination of playing media in parallel or after each other, or etc. If you think of, for example, a slideshow, a slide presentation with a voiceover. This example here, the indentation went wrong at the top line. So a single slide is you play in parallel an image, a text explaining the image, and a piece of audio that describes the image in audio. And so that is one slide, and our slideshow is simply a sequence of these slides. The nice thing of using the more standard model to do a multimedia presentation is a timeline. The timeline has a timeline is static, and that has a disadvantage. So let's say that I have this slideshow. It knows that these items are played in parallel. So it knows, well, the image is by default takes as long as the longest thing here, which is probably going to be the audio, because images and text don't take any time. Now the nice thing is, if I replace this audio by a different audio sequence, now the image and the text extend in time so that they stay on screen for the same amount of time as the audio takes. And that is very handy, and especially if you look at the, if you remember the previous slide, the optional playback. So now I do this presentation, but instead of the audio, I have two choices of audio, the Dutch and the German. And German is of course a much more precise language than Dutch, so getting the same idea across will take 2 seconds in Dutch and 6 seconds in German. If you play this back in Dutch, the slides will take 2 seconds, 2 seconds, 2 seconds. If you play it back in German, the slides will automatically take 5 seconds, 5 seconds, or whatever time the utterance takes. And that is very nice, because that means
Finish your
yeah, that means that whereas with a timeline, you would have to, if you're lucky, you could anchor your images to the audio, and changing the audio would change the images around. If you're unlucky, you end up with all your audio here and all your images there, and you've got to pull them back, and you can't do dynamically.
And I think that's one of the things that you missed about declarative and procedural, is that declarative is tractable, that you can tractable, yeah, that you can analyze it and do stuff with it that you can't necessarily do with. I mean, that's why, for instance, Google doesn't search Flash, because it's not tractable. There's you actually have to execute it to get it out.
Yeah.
And so it's much more analyzable, and therefore you can do more things with it.
You can reason about it.
Yeah.
Tractable. I don't remember that word. Very nice word. Yeah. So that's also thank you, because I forgot the declarative bit. So here you can see the declarative bit. We just say this has to take the same amount of time, and how it's done. As an author, we don't care, as long as it happens. Okay, back to the web. Is that enough SMIL? People will now happily go off and create small presentations all by themselves? Yeah. I actually see people saying this. There's no test at the end. So now, we want to do multimedia on the web. Let's say we want to do a sequence of videos. If we want to do this in HTML, we've got a bit of a problem, because HTML doesn't have sequences of videos. So I don't know whoever did it in JavaScript programming or HTML document fiddling. You can do a lot of things in HTML with JavaScript, but it can be complicated. So what you would have to do to have a sequence of videos is you take that video element and you attach a script to the element, and you tell in the HTML whenever the element has finished playing back the video, give me a notification. So then the notification comes in, and then in JavaScript you program that you create a new video element, you stuff it over the old video element, and you attach that same script to the new element. And then you jump back to HTML and it starts playing the new element. So you've got to explicitly program when the element ends, then start the next element, etc. This also means that, for example, the new element isn't in the original document. So again, it's not tractable. You can't search it. You may not even know that it's there because it's dynamically inserted. And you can't go fast forward and back. That all won't work. And SMIL, well, I mean, you could have guessed this by now. A sequence of video is simply a sequence with 2 video clips. And multimedia web apps. Well, HTML5, you've got that script, so it's easy enough to, let's say we want to play the second video only on a Monday. Well, you've got that piece of scripting anyway that gets executed after your video element ends. So it's very easy to add one line of code and say only do it on Monday. In SMIL, well, yeah, unless SMIL has an operator for that optional playback, which says only do this on a Monday, you're a bit stuck. And SMIL has built-in operators for language choice and screen size and all that sort of stuff, but Monday isn't part of it. So we gotta solve this problem here. But first, let's look at what would a multimedia web application be. I mean, what is the type of application that we're thinking of here? And I have an example here of think of an interactive travel guide. So it is called the I'll show you in a minute. It's the no budget bicycle tour to Amsterdam, which has me cycling through the city while holding a camera in front of me, and highlighting interesting points in Amsterdam and telling you about hotels and shopping and museums and that kind of thing. And so the overall structure is like those infotainment things you see on television, sort of half-an-hour program, and a presenter takes you to a city and shows you all the highlights. But what makes it interesting as a web app is that the user can beforehand say, well, I am interested in hotel information and I'm interested in museums and culture, but don't bother with shopping because I don't like shopping. And moreover, the user can say, well, I'm German, so I'd like to get the text in German. But there's all sorts of influence that the user can have on the presentation. And even halfway, the user can decide, so the user says, well, give me the shopping information, but after a while, they think, well, that's a lot, cut it out. So now the movie has to react to that, and the movie shortens and lengthens depending on the choices made by the user.
How do you display all this in the end?
I'll show you in a moment. I'm not going to give a demo. No, I'll wait for the next slide and I'll tell you why I won't give a demo. That's very bad news for web apps. The other way around, so the user can control the multimedia presentation, but also the other way around. The multimedia presentation can put stuff on the web page that the user can then visit to get more background information. So the video presentation will say, this is the Rijksmuseum, it's got the Nachtwacht, and then quickly continue on to more shopping. But the user can at that point, you get links to the Rijksmuseum and that sort of stuff, so the viewer can opt to view the additional material. And moreover, it's not so very important for this talk, but it's actually the components used can be reused, the structure can be reused, and the components can be reused. And that's nice. So you can take this structure, and I did an Amsterdam presentation. If you want to do a Rotterdam presentation, then you can insert your own material and get a Rotterdam presentation. This is what it looks like. So there's our good-looking presenter, well lit, and it's got a Google map. It's got the options for the content you want to see, and it's got background material. So here's this is the main multimedia body of the presentation, which has the video. And I should have done this before actually pointing at it with my hand. Options you can select, and Google Maps and background material. The bad news of web applications is that they depend on so much technology that this application stopped working. And the reason it stopped working is, in case anyone's interested, follow for future reference if you do web applications. I use an Xforms library to do the interaction there, and that Xforms library is no longer maintained, and security updates to all browsers have, apparently the Xforms library uses something in its implementation that is considered to be bad form or bad security practice. So security updates, you know, no way to stop them, you're gonna get them. So, or at least if you get them, there's no way to roll them back. So the Xforms library stopped working because of a problem out of my control, and there's no way I'm going to get back this presentation, because the whole presentation stopped working because of that.
Which library was it?
Form faces. And the thing is, so I will. I mean, there is an easy way around, or an easy way around it. I mean, I need to
Use an older browser.
Sorry.
Older browser maybe.
I could, if I would find you know, a Mac that still ran 10.4, then maybe the Safari would be old enough that it isn't updated anymore. But the thing is with security updates, I mean, security updates are in this way really disruptive, because they often get ported back even to older browsers. So I mean, if it's a new feature, then you don't say, well, you know, I won't upgrade to Firefox 5 or whatever. But the security updates often get transferred back to the older things.
Do you use XSLT with SMIL? So you get your
No. Not this. I could.
Okay. So in effect, what you'd be doing, you'd be declaring your components for the website, but you'd still have to change it to HTML code.
Yeah. This is, or the center is the outer layer is a toolkit, but the center is manually coded. But that's just, I mean, this is a proof of concept demonstration.
No, but I mean, you got your sequence in SMIL, and it says play video 1, video 2, video 3. What audio goes with it, and then you want to display this. What's in your SMIL?
Okay, no, that's actually it's actually because browsers don't implement SMIL at the moment.
No.
So what you actually see here is that center bit. Let's go back. This center bit is a plugin. So the SMIL is running in a SMIL engine that is a plugin in the browser, and it communicates. Come on. Oh, if it's still busy, it won't let me go to the next slide. We'll get to the implementation in a moment, because that's actually no, we'll get to it in a moment. Where was I? Yeah. Okay. So for this application, we want both the declarative model for our multimedia, which is nice and makes it adaptive, but we also want the interaction, which SMIL doesn't provide, but HTML provides. So, as I said, we combine SMIL and HTML by using a browser plugin. But now the SMIL running in the browser plugin needs to talk to the Xforms user interaction that runs in the browser, and needs to be able to, you know, change the additional content in the browser window. So this is where SMIL state comes in. SMIL state is a way of getting and setting variables in SMIL. And so that means that we can now, even though SMIL has only predefined constructs for, you know, language is English, we can now do only on a Monday by programming in some external language, setting a variable, and the SMIL can pick up that variable. Moreover, the data of the variables is stored externally, or is at least externally accessible. That means we can share it. And in this example, what we can share it with is our HTML code. In another example, I mentioned digital signage before. With digital signage, what you can think is, if you have those advertisements in the tram, think you put a GPS receiver in the tram and connected the GPS locations to a couple of small state variables, and the tram can give you advertisements that are based on where the tram is currently traveling. And moreover, it can say that the most of the shopping advertisements won't be shown on a Sunday because the shop is closed anyway, except if you're in the center, because in the center the shops are open on a Sunday. So you can the designer of the presentation doesn't have to worry about the designer of the presentation knows these variables are available. How they are available, it doesn't care. It can just design, he or she can just design the presentation knowing that the knowledge will be available. So how does that work? Yeah, I've sort of said this already. So we've got the shared data, which is actually stored as an XML document. And in our sample bicycle tour application, the HTML and the X-forms actually, more the X-forms than the HTML, uses as its instance, and it can change variables here or look at variables here, and the same for the SMIL document running in the plugin. It can look at it, and so the two can communicate. One way of communicating is SMIL controlling what is shown on the web page. So for that additional material, a small statement that sets a variable additional material, the HTML picks up the additional material, inserts it into the displayed HTML document, and you see the new link. And the other way around is a variable that starts off being 1. User interaction sets it to 0. By the time the small document comes to this optional scene, it sees, oh, the variable is 0. It doesn't play that part of the presentation. What I at least like about this model is that there's very clean separation between the multimedia and the interaction, and it's really only the data model that is the API between the two. And that means that in that example web page that I showed you, I used Google Earth as a plugin, but actually the small code doesn't know that. The only thing that's in the small code is Jack is now at these GPS coordinates. He's now at these GPS coordinates. And those coordinates get pushed into the data model. That they're picked up by a Google Map widget is open to the overall designer. If somebody wants to use Microsoft Maps or Yahoo Maps, or even if you have a small screen, no maps, or if you have an interface like this that your phone points in the right direction, that is really that is completely open. And the same for the ad service. There were advertisements. I don't know if you saw them. There were targeted ads on the original page. So all this enables reuse, because again, if you fill in Rotterdam coordinates, you get a Rotterdam. Just like if you replace Google Maps by another map service, it still works. If you replace Amsterdam coordinates by Rotterdam coordinates, it also still works. That brings us about to the end. I'm almost on time. Other use cases for this technology. I would really like to do something with interactive courseware. We haven't. We've been looking for projects in this area, but we haven't found much. But it's really, think of you get a lecture. At the end, you get exercises. Based on your answers to the exercises, you will either get a repeat of the previous lecture, an extended version of the previous lecture, go to the next lecture, skip a section, whatever. moreover, all the data is collected in that small state variable document. So that means you can very easily transfer that to a server for scoring by a teacher. Well, games, of course, quizzes are very similar to courseware. Yeah, I've talked about reactive digital signage already. And these are just two examples. I mean, anything where you want a multimedia presentation to interact with the outside world, I think the small state gives you a very both a strong combination point, but still also a separation point where the two parts don't have to be too aware of each other and can do their own thing while they know to provide enough information to the other part of the system. Summary. SMIL, a very nice language for declarative multimedia. Small states acts reactivity and interaction, and thereby enables multimedia to be easily combined with other technologies without using the advantages of declarative multimedia composition. And therefore it enables multimedia to be used fairly easily in web applications without sacrificing the advantages. Okay, this is the free software day. So what is free here? Small tree, the standard, is free. If you're interested in seeing more of it, look at the W3C website. You want to start at, there's an introduction page. The bad news is that some of the links on the introduction page are outdated, so you may have to look a bit to find. But there's interesting starter courses for SMIL on W3C site. The free software, the Amulet player, the player that was used to, among other things, implement this this demo, is available for Mac, Linux, and Windows, and it's portable to many different platforms. It has run in the past on Nokia Maemo. It has run on Windows Mobile. We've dropped support for those platforms because we simply don't have the time to maintain it ourselves. But it's fairly portable to other platforms in case you want to use it for something. It's easily extended in C or C++, but also in Python. You can, as it comes, you can add little Python scripts to do things like getting GPS coordinates into your presentation or whatever. It's also easily embeddable. So if you have another application and you want to use a bit of multimedia in that, then Amulet should be well suited for that.
So you actually put Python in the Amulet player?
Sorry?
Where'd you place these scripts?
You place them in the plugin directory.
Okay, so the plugin takes it. Okay.
Yeah. There's actually, I mean, the normal plugins for Amulet are binary code, so written in C. But there's a Python, there's a plugin that actually contains a Python interpreter, and if it finds Python files in the plugin directory, it'll load that and use those to execute it. So that's actually fairly easy to extend. Oh yeah, and it's available both standalone as a standalone app and as a browser plugin. And right now we're working on the iPhone. That should be done in a few months. And you find everything at AmuletPlayer.org, where you will also find example presentations and again more links to background material. Oh, I finished as good as in time.
So what would be the advantage of SMIL, or is it only that it's tractable compared to Flash, for example? Because with Flash you already get the scripts included as well, so you can do a whole lot of interaction and multimedia together.
Well, I can answer that as a point I was going to make, is that another thing Jack missed about the advantages of declarative or procedural is the cost. and I've got a shed full of examples of in industry the differences in costs. And the one I like to use most is a company that doesn't want to be named, makes room-sized machines sort of on a one-off basis or in small batches. Obviously, there are not many people who need room-sized machines. And you know, you actually walk inside, and of course the user interface is really, really complicated. And they've been doing this for a long time, so they know what it takes. And the user interface for these things takes them 30 people 5 years to do. And then they decided to do so that's 115 person years, as it were. And they decided 1 year to try it declaratively, using X-forms actually. And it took 1 year with 10 people. So it's an order of magnitude saving. And I've got lots of examples that basically seem to back that up, that it's order of magnitude. A nice one that I know of is a company, and the boss knew that there was this thing about declarative and procedural, and he had people who supported both sides. So he said, well, look, this next project, I want you to, this is what our project's going to do. I want you to go away now and work out for me how long and how much it's going to cost to do. And so, and come back in 2 days. And so they came back in 2 days, and the procedural guy said, well, I'm going to need a month to work out how long it's going to take us. And the procedural guy said, I've done it already.
Declarative, the last one.
What?
Yeah, you said procedural again.
Oh, sorry, declarative. The declarative guy said, I've done it already.
Yeah, yeah.
So it's just a big saving.
Yeah, it doesn't. I mean, I love declarative models. You love them even more. I mean, there are definitely things that are small things are much easier often to do procedural than declarative. Algorithms are very difficult to do declarative. But indeed, in the large, you know, the bigger your system is, the bigger the advantage will be of a declarative system. I don't know if that answered your question.
Oh, so what's the advantage? But this is one advantage.
Yeah. More comments, questions? No?
Yeah, one comment.
Yeah.
SMIL is very important for the DAISY format. DAISY is
Yeah.
audiobook
Yeah.
format.
Yeah.
And one example what I have is we use now an online player for streaming DAISY books on handhelds, for example.
Oh.
And we are now on version 3.2, so we got now EPUB support, which is the regular ebook format for the international libraries.
Mm-hmm.
So SMIL is very important, and I really want to point that out.
Sorry, MMS, people said MMS all the time, but and indeed DAISY is it's digital talking books.
Yes.
Is also a format that is based on SMIL, where SMIL creates the overall structure and the synchronization between the written text and the audio text. So that's one of your successes.
You
can do more with it, but we do more with it.
Yeah, you can do an awful lot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So when you say you've got EPUB support, do you mean it's in the EPUB document format?
Yes.
Okay, that's good.
And we can stream text to audio and that sort of stuff.
Sure.
Okay. Which player is this?
Then I have to do it in Dutch. It's the site aangepastlezen.nl.
Aangepast lezen.
Yeah.
Okay. I didn't know that. Interesting. I'll check it out immediately.
Okay.
Thank you. Yeah. Time for coffee.
Yeah.
Thank you.